This one has been a long time coming. I did a video on the first Conjuring like 2 months ago and was planning on doing the other movies one of these days, and the day has come. I'm gonna be honest with you, I remember nothing about this movie. I don't even remember when's the last time I watched it. I do remember the nun makes an appearance in this for the first time. Other than that, I want to see how this movie holds up 10 years later. And by the title, I'd say it holds up pretty well. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's see what the Warrens are up to this time. Let's get into it. We start off with a monologue from Lorraine, saying that the case this movie revolves around still haunts her to this day. I kind of feel like that's what they said in the first movie, but whatever. But before we can get to that, Ed and Lorraine found themselves in New York at the infamous Amityville house, where in real life, Ronald Joseph Defoe Jr. killed his entire family in November of 1974. His mother and father, his 2 brothers, and his 2 sisters. Now, there have been way too many movies made about this story. The one I remember is the 2005 film with Ryan Reynolds, and that damn scene with the little girl in the closet always scared the hell out of me. But Ed and Lorraine are here to help the Lutz family, who did have real-life claims of paranormal activity in this house. But this also led to lawsuits and various controversies, so you be the judge of that. The coolest part of this opening sequence is Lorraine channeling herself through Ronald, as she replays the events of that fatal night. You can see Lorraine walking, but her reflection in the mirror shows Ronald. That's pretty sick. Now, Ronald had many different claims for his motive of why he did what he did, and even to this day his motive is still unclear. In fact, he only recently passed away in 2021, but one of his reasonings was the main one that people took and ran with, was that he heard voices in the house telling him to do it. So that's gotta mean demons, right? I don't know, makes sense to me. Of course it does. It's honestly insanely dark, especially when you get to the shootings of the children. Now, while this is all happening, we see a door open off to the side to reveal a boy with glowing eyes. Now, I believe this is a reference to this photo right here, which if you've been on the internet as long as I have, especially on the paranormal side of things, you've seen this photo before. It was said to be the ghost of John Defoe, one of the younger brothers that was murdered that night. But in reality, it was just some guy named Paul Burtz. He was an investigator working with the Warrens, ironically. Yeah, this is literally an adult man with glasses kneeling down. It's still kind of eerie, but man, that's disappointing. Anyway, the little boy runs downstairs and Lorraine follows him. We get this shot and it's pretty unsettling. They all look into another direction and Lorraine goes to look as well. It's a mirror with a sheet on it. Lorraine takes it off and soon after the nun slides in like a f***ing JoJo stand. And you can bet your grieving butt that she proceeds to look back and forth behind her into the mirror just for the nun to get closer each time. Because instead of turning around completely and leaving, she decides she wants to get choked out by an ancient demon. She stops getting demon handled and then suddenly Ed shows up in the shadows and gets folded, signifying that maybe something bad is gonna happen to Ed in this film. She screams hysterically and we're brought back to the world of the living. And for some reason, instead of telling Ed, "Hey hun, I just saw you die," she says this.
Ed, this is as close to hell as I ever want to get.
Yeah, no, that's not ominous at all. Now, after Ed and Lorraine's involvement with the Amityville house, it would get them a lot more exposure to the public. And while this was happening, there was another terrible haunting happening with our friends across the pond. We're going to England, mate. Oh God, please no. Title card: My worst enemy, school. We cut to 2 young girls smoking a cigarette. Well, actually, only one of the girls is smoking it. The one on the right is Janet and the one on the left is Camila. And they're just talking about normal stuff girls do at this age. Sneaking out and French kissing boys. I don't know. I was pretending to morph into a Power Ranger in the living room around this age. Anyway, one of the teachers finds them and tells them to get inside immediately, but not before taking a hit of the cigarette she just confiscated. Sure are leading by example, are we? We then meet some more rambunctious individuals: Margaret, Johnny, and little Billy. These are all Janet's siblings, by the way. And they get introduced in such a we need to wait for these characters to be introduced sort of way.
Margaret! Johnny! Janet, Billy!
I'd say this is ridiculous, but I'd be lying if I didn't greet people by just yelling their name out like I'm choosing a character in Smash Bros. Now, little Billy here has a stuttering problem, which I normally wouldn't point out because I go through the vocal equivalent of Twister sometimes, and kids are mean, and a boy named Peter at school teases him for it. And then proceeds to call Janet a lesbian. Not really progressive of you, Peter. Any British person watching this is immediately leaving a dislike. We cut to their house as we meet their mother, Peggy Hodgson, and off rip we can see she's going through it. Money's tight, husband doesn't seem to be in the picture, house full of kids. Take all of that and add demons on top, and I'd be stressed too. Also, yelling at your kid for smoking while also smoking is actually hilarious. Also, Janet, you could help your case if you explained it better. She just keeps exclaiming how she wasn't smoking and not expanding on it, which I'd assume is not to snitch on Camilla, but still, now your mom thinks you're a delinquent. Meanwhile, Billy is crying about biscuits and Peggy says they have none because they have no money. Demons really love terrorizing the poor families, huh? We cut to nighttime and fortunately, Billy does get his biscuits. Sometimes you gotta make that sacrifice, Peggy. Lung cancer or making your child smile. I would hope that's an easy decision. Margaret walks into her and Janet's room and Janet has a spirit board on the bed. Her and Camilla had made it and have already played with it. I don't know, Janet. Camilla seems like a pretty bad influence if you ask me. First cigarettes and now you're contacting demons? Margaret decides to try it out with Janet, but nothing happens and they head to bed. We hear a loud thud and all of a sudden Janet's in the living room. Insane transition, by the way. We check back in with Margaret, who hears loud banging on the door, which at first I thought it was Janet coming back to the room since the door is locked, but Janet doesn't come around the corner until moments later. Also, how did that not wake up everyone else in the house? She was banging like the police. We cut to the next day with Peggy talking to her friend Peggy. What are the odds? Nothing too important besides Peggy saying she never sees her children's father, and that Janet took it pretty hard when he left. Wonder what the story is there. Checking back with Ed and Lorraine on the Becky Rivers show. It's got a nice ring to it. Who have an aunt by the name of Dr. Stephen Cacklin, which in this scene they kind of make you gravitate towards Ed and Lorraine's side because we know they're legit, and he's calling them out for being cons and fakes, getting people to believe in silly ghost stories. But in real life, you'd probably agree with him. Ed is ready to throw hands, and Lorraine seems like she's objecting, but I'm sure she would love for Ed to mollywop this guy. The show ends, and Ed is pissed. However, Lorraine gets him to calm down. I'd honestly feel the same way. All the families we've saved from otherworldly literally demons, and here comes some random Joe schmo with a degree and certificates and years of education. What the hell does he know? You can tell Lorraine low-key likes Ed popping off. That's her man for real. Back at the Hodgson residence, Janet is helping out Billy with his speech impediment with yet another kid's toy that will most likely be used for a jump scare. We didn't learn our lesson from the last movie? They're singing the song of the Crooked Man, which RIP to that film project. I was actually excited for that movie back when it was announced before it got canned. For the nun of all things. I'm sorry, this was one of the more unique aspects of this movie, and it got shelled for the most generic demon possession movie of all time, which I will be covering because of course I am. Crooked Man rant aside, they finish up their game. Billy eats more biscuits and they head to bed. His mom tells him not to eat too many or he'll wake up in the middle of the night thirsty. So yeah, Billy wakes up in the middle of the night thirsty. God damn it, Billy! Nothing really happens to him besides him seeing a swing swinging by itself outside. However, Janet is fighting demons in her sleep. That's one of the rare times that sentence is meant literally. She keeps saying stop it and please no. Margaret wakes up and tells Janet to wake up because she's dreaming. However, Janet settles down and Margaret goes back to sleep. Psych bitch, get up, I'm on the phone.
Who are you? What are you doing here?
Playing a game with Billy.
Leave Billy alone. He'll tell my mom if you don't stop.
I'll break her neck.
How the hell you gonna use me to communicate with me?
I'm gonna kill your mother and take your brother away. Why is she not responding?
You forgot to sever the connection, sir.
Shit, the remote. Damn it, Tommy, I told you to stop leaving your Beyblade arena in the middle of the floor.
It helps with my crippling depression, sir.
Jesus Christ.
Are you allowed to say that, sir?
Say what?
Janet begins to cry and Margaret calms her down and puts her back to sleep. Or so she thought. She lays back down and gets startled by Janet yelling at her to stay away from Billy. Well, not specifically her, but in her direction. Margaret insists no one is there, but you can hear someone whisper off screen, "This is my house." Then Janet proceeds to lay back down and go back to sleep like everything's fucking normal. Margaret decides to keep the light on before laying back down, and I don't blame her. Somehow Billy was still downstairs the entire time. He goes to head back to his room and accidentally hits his little fire truck, and it begins to make a bunch of noise. He turns it off and he rolls it back into his tent. As he's heading to bed, he hears it go off again slightly, but nothing else after that. As soon as he's laying down for a little bit, the fire truck comes rolling down the hallway and into his room. You waited until I got comfortable to do that? These demons are so inconsiderate, I swear. He turns it back off and rolls it back into his tent once more. This time it rolls back again and we hear a terrible yell/groan. I don't know what you want me to do with that. Are you in pain? Did you sneeze? Laura knows I've been jump scared by old people sneezing. That's the fastest you'll dial 911 before you realize it's a false alarm. Billy yells and runs to his mom's room and wakes her up. She goes to check and says Billy was just having a bad dream. However, they hear the rocking chair downstairs rocking back and forth. Peggy tells him to go to his room and he runs and shuts the door. She heads down there and we can clearly see someone is in the chair, but it turns out to be Janet. Love how Peggy came down here with no weapons or defense. She must have been ready to throw straight hands. Janet says she must have been sleepwalking again. Peggy feels her forehead and she's burning up. She takes her upstairs and tells her to stay home from school tomorrow. We cut to the next morning. Everyone's out of the house besides Janet, of course. She's watching something on the TV. Oh shit, is that It's Greaves YT? Funny, I didn't know they had YouTube in 1977. Shut up. However, her Greaves gets interrupted by the TV switching channels by itself. She thinks maybe it's just tweaking out, so she changes it back and it does it again. And this time the remote disappears. She goes to look for it, but the phone begins to ring. She picks it up and it's just her mom. While she's talking though, she looks over to the old rocking chair and the remote is there. That thieving bitch! Did he really take the remote just to watch what he wanted to watch? Can we set up an agreement or something? You get the TV on weekdays and I get it on weekends and off days, because this ain't gonna work. She sits back down on the couch and tries to watch TV without freaking out. And this time there's a loud thunder sound and the TV just cuts to straight static. She goes to bang on it to get the image back, and in the reflection of the TV she sees an old man, and this happens.
My house!
Well, damn. I don't even know why you're yelling at me. I don't even pay rent here. You need to take this up with my mama. We check back with the Warrens as Lorraine wakes up to an empty bed. She finds Ed up early painting this. I mean, honestly, context aside, this is pretty impressive. If the ghost haunting stuff falls through, you definitely got a future in selling paintings. Lorraine looks slightly disturbed as she walks away and sits down on the kitchen table. Ed goes to check on her and she tells him they need to stop taking cases for a while. Still not disclosing that she saw him get folded back savage in one of her visions. Judy in the house! Ed says that he trusts her and they can chill on cases and focus on lectures. Back with the Hodgson family, Janet is tying herself to the bed to stop her from sleepwalking. Margaret puts on some headphones and lies down. I'm sure that'll be great when the ghosts start a garage band and use our house as an instrument, because Janet will be the only one to hear it. She doesn't even get to lie down for a minute before getting pulled onto the floor. The demons attempt at getting her downstairs, failing. The banging on the door is back and Janet decides to take part of this cruel knock-knock joke. As she goes to open the door. You know this game already, no one's there. And the hallway lights don't work. Fabulous. She goes to one of the shelves and grabs a really cool looking silver flashlight. I actually want one of these, that looks fire. She shines the light around and makes her way halfway down the stairs, all before the rocking chair down there starts rocking aggressively. She books it back upstairs into her room. It puts a chair on it? I thought this door locks. I guess not. She runs to her bed, but whoop, too late. The chair is already off and right next to her bed and the door is wide open. Footsteps slowly making their way towards her room. And as any child would do in this situation, she hides under the covers. See, Paul? Child. You could have given that girl a two-piece no biscuit. Sorry, Billy. It comes closer until it's right over her bed and her blanket gets yanked off. And she's holding her shoulder for some reason. Margaret wakes up and asks her what's wrong, and Janet says there's someone in the room. Margaret looks around and says there's no one here, and then both their beds start to shake violently. They both scream and run to their mom's room. They try to explain to her that something's wrong, although you can only make out so much from two girls screaming and yelling at the same time. Janet even showing a bite mark on her shoulder, which this is the ghost of an old man. You just out here biting little girls' shoulders? What type of weird timing are you on, Henry? That's not his name. I just said the first old man name that came to mind. Sorry to all the young Henrys out there. Peggy goes to their room and finds a spirit board and thinks they're playing a trick on each other, which I don't know how she got to this conclusion. Like, yeah, you can blame it on them playing spooky ghost games, but your daughter has a literal bite mark on her shoulder. There's just such thing as pranks, and then there's just straight up abuse. She yells at them, but soon gets proven wrong as the dresser goes sliding across the room, slamming the door shut. Also, poor Johnny and Billy just in the background confused as fuck. Yeah, not fun and games anymore, is it, Peggy? Next time, believe your children when they tell you something is wrong. Everyone in the house runs over to the other Peggy's house. Mama Peggy explains to other Peggy that she saw the dresser move by itself. Other Peggy's husband Vic comes back from checking the house and says he didn't find anything, not even in the basement. He also called the police, which good thinking, Vic. First time someone did something smart in these movies. The police show up and look around as Vic thought someone might be playing a trick on them, which this would be a pretty elaborate trick if I've ever seen one. Also forgot to mention there's a dog in this movie. If this dog dies, I'm ending this video. Okay, I'm not, but I'm gonna be very upset about it. R.I.P. Sadie. I don't know this dog's name, but he seems nice. Anyway, like I said, the police look around and they don't find anything. However, they all hear something moving upstairs. The policewoman asks her partner to bring her a chair to stand on, and they all begin to hear all sorts of rustling around, knocking noises, and banging. I was half expecting this chair to get swiped up from under her, but the next best thing happens. She steps down and the chair glides across the room and back into the kitchen. They all exit the house and they say they'll put in a report. What the fuck is an incident report gonna do? Unless it's a report to the Ghostbusters or the Scooby Gang, that report is gonna get looked at once and thrown into the shredder. The policewoman says this might be something beyond what they can do. She knows the priest was a family friend and says she'll contact them for Peggy. We're back at the Warren household, and this is one of my favorite scenes from back then when I first watched this movie. It's also the only one I remember. As Lorraine and Judy are both enjoying their peace and quiet, something is seen in the hallway walking behind Judy. She turns around and we see Lorraine look up from her book and Judy is gone. Lorraine gets up to call her name, but she doesn't answer. She finds her in the hallway and we get this scene.
Honey, what's wrong?
Mom, who's that?
Oh look, it's back when the nun was actually scary. She walks out of frame and Lorraine tells Judy to go back to the room. She heads into their study and the picture of the nun is on the wall for some reason. Why did you hang this up? Was this Ed's doing? I don't think I want to be looking at this while I'm trying to get work done. Suddenly the radio turns on behind her and starts playing religious music. Ah yes, because it's a demon cosplaying as a nun. Clever. She turns the radio off and turns around and the nun's eyes are closed and suddenly they're wide open. It's a cool effect. Like it's a painting with the most realistic eyes you can imagine. Lorraine turns the light on and the painting goes back to normal. She goes to leave but the door slams and the blinds shut. The painting in the corner begins to shake and we see the shadow of the nun walking through the wall and into the nun's painting. This is actually really cool. The scares in this movie can be pretty creative at times. You see hands wrap around the frame as the nun comes sprinting towards Lorraine, knocking her backwards. And suddenly she's back in the Amityville house basement. She can see the demon clear as day now. She yells at it asking what it wants and for it to tell her who it is. In reality though, this is a dream/vision. Lorraine is on the couch still and starts violently scratching her book with her pen, all while Judy tries to wake her up. The nun looks over and we see that apparition of Ed again, although this time it shows his face. And he says, "I'm sorry, Lorraine," as he's pierced right through the chest. She finally wakes up and hugs Judy. She tells her she's okay as she worryingly looks at her book. Back with the Hodgson family, Peggy is on her way home and she gets stopped by a guy from a television program called Wide Angle. Somehow he got intel on the police report about the incident from last week. However, Peggy isn't interested in her family's trauma becoming a news story. Although this guy Kent makes a good point. A widespread story like this could lead to them getting some help. Maybe even some help from some American ghost hunters whose last name rhymes with Lauren. Wonder who he's talking about. Ed and Lorraine, you dunce. Oh, right. Yeah, that makes more sense. I don't get paid enough for this. We get some testimonies from people who have claimed to see the paranormal phenomena. Two of these people we've never seen before, so I don't know how the hell they got interviews. However, we do see the two police officers from earlier. We then meet a man named Morris Gross, an engineering consultant investigating the Hodgson's case. Why are you staring into my soul, Morris? Blink! We also meet a woman named Anita Gregory, a skeptic who believes that children just have a wild imagination. Wait a minute. Where do I know you from? Oh my god, she was in Psych. That one episode with that spy lady who was on the run from the government. I swear, I be knowing actors from the most obscure things. We cut to Margaret and Janet being interviewed by Kent. Janet says it's gotten worse ever since Morris kept having a Q&A with the demon. Kent gets the bright idea to ask some questions right on the spot. I'm sure that'll go well. It doesn't. Oh, what a surprise. All of a sudden, Janet begins to growl and her voice gets deeper and more demented. Morris begins asking what's his name and it begins to growl even more, saying Janet is asleep and he's the captain now. Still claiming that everyone is trespassing and that this house belongs to it. Listen fam, if it was that easy, we would have been left. Does it look like we got the money to just get up and move right now? This might be the first demon that won't attach itself to them if they try to leave. He just wants the house all to himself. He also says he likes to hear their screams. Oh yeah, terrorizing women and children. What a stand-up guy. He says his name is Bill Wilkins and that this is his house. He died at the age of 72 from a brain hemorrhage shortly after he went blind. And you'll never guess what part of the house he died in. Is it the rocking chair? Yeah, it's the rocking chair. No surprise there. Although it is a surprise when he calls Peggy an old cow. Who are you calling old, Bill? Didn't you just say you were 72? She's younger than you. You're the last person to call someone old here. Janet comes back and she excuses herself as as Peggy runs after her. Poor Peggy. You can tell she's really scared for her daughter as this thing has seemed to attach itself to her. Mama Peggy and the kids are staying with other Peggy for the meantime. Although back at the Hodgins household, Billy's Crooked Man toy begins to play by itself, and the Crooked Man on the toy disappears. We cut to Billy sleeping, and all of a sudden he hears a bell ringing in the distance. See, earlier we found out that PN's dog, PN stands for Peggy Nottingham. That's the friend of Mama Peggy. I figured it'd be easier to call her something else since these two have the same exact name. Rings a bell on the wall when he wants to use the bathroom. It's something they trained him to do, so Billy gets up to let the dog out. However, the dog doesn't move when Billy opens the door. Suddenly it begins to growl and transform into something else. And this is another one of the coolest scares in the movie, as the dog begins to transform into the Crooked Man. He's got this sort of claymation art style to him, which I've never seen them do again in this franchise, but it's so sick. Billy is gobsmacked. I've never used that word a day in my life. It gets tripped up by the Crooked Man's umbrella. He begins to recite the words of the song, but this time in a more sinister way. Soon, I promise. Billy gets up and runs to get his mom, waking everyone else up in the process. He frantically tries to tell her it's the Crooked Man, but she thinks he may have just had a bad dream. Until the Crooked Man begins to come around the corner and it's just Janet? What? You mean to tell me this 11-year-old girl turned into a dog, then turned into the Crooked Man, then back into an 11-year-old girl? What type of metamorphosis do you have to go through to get to such a thing? All of her bones have to be broken right now. She finishes the nursery rhyme and screeches at the family as all of the nearby lights start exploding. She collapses to the floor and begins foaming at the mouth as Peggy runs over to her and tells them to call an ambulance. We're back with the Warrens as Father Gordon is playing them a recording of when Janet got possessed during her interview. Ed thinks it's an actual old man until Father Gordon tells him it was Janet speaking. Lorraine's like, I don't want to deal with this shit, but Father Gordon says he wants them to observe and gather information. If it's a hoax, they can leave whenever. And Lorraine finally tells Ed she saw him die in a vision. We then learn it was the same thing she saw 7 years ago during the exorcism, when that man had grabbed her and stared into her soul. Hence why she locked herself in a room for a week and some change. Ed isn't too concerned about it. He says that maybe she's seeing him die to help her find a way to prevent it. He also says they shouldn't run away from a family in need. She finally gets on board to go into England, but only to observe. And if shit starts popping off, they need to inform the church and dip. Ed promises her that's what they'll do, but we all know that's not what they're gonna do. They make it to England and meet Peggy at her house. All the other kids are at PN's house and it's just her and Janet staying here now. Which is bogus as fuck because you want us to leave and when we do, you still terrorize us? And now we're forced to come back? At this point, I think the demon's just doing this for the love of the game. Peggy is doing her best to explain the situation to Ed, but Morris has apparently turned into a piggy bank because he keeps giving his 2 cents. They locked up the girls' room and placed crosses all over the wall. According to Peggy, they haven't helped at all. Lorraine takes it upon herself to talk to Janet alone. Janet isn't really open to talking to Lorraine, but then Lorraine tells her how she knows what it's like to be different, to feel casted out from the world. But sometimes it takes one person to change all of that, but it only happens once you open up. And that's exactly what Janet does. You can tell Lorraine is a really good mom. Janet lets her know how alone she feels and how everyone's been treating her differently lately because of all the things that are going on. She's not even able to sleep at night anymore. We cut back to Ed and Peggy and she tells Ed about Janet waking up in this rocking chair, the exact chair that Bill died in. Ed asks where she got it from and she explains that her ex-husband was the one who bought all the furniture when they first moved in. Also, he left them to start a new family, which explains his absence, piece of shit. Back with Lorraine and Janet, she asks her what it feels like when Bill is speaking through her. She wonders if it feels like it's coming from inside her, but Janet says no, it feels like someone is talking from behind her, using her as a puppet. Lorraine then asks if he says anything that only her and Bill can hear, and Janet says yes, Bill says he wants to hurt her, and Lorraine asks, when did he say that?
Right now.
Fuck you, Bill. Now it's time for Ed to talk to the entity himself. They give Janet some water to hold in her mouth. Ed says this is to prove that Janet isn't making the voice herself, which I know is precautions, but that is the most talented future voice actor ever if this preteen is able to sound like a 72-year-old man. Nonetheless, they all gather around Janet and Ed starts asking questions although nothing happens. Janet spits out the water and says Bill won't speak if everyone's staring at him. What the fuck, Bill? You got stage fright all of a sudden? You were literally just talking on live television. Yeah, you can't respond to a room of 4 people? This old man don't know what he's doing, he's just giving it out. Did you just make a TikTok reference? No. He must never know. Me using the wrong franchise's music aside, they all turn around and Bill peeks his old ugly head out. And this entity seems puzzled and confused. It keeps repeating, this is my home, and it wonders where its family is. But Ed tells it if its family was here, they're long gone now. He says Ed's name, signifying he knows who he is, but also saying other variations of his name. Specifically Edward, saying Ed's father would call him that, but Ed says that's false. Bill says he doesn't need Ed's help, and Ed wonders why he doesn't just move on to heaven. But Bill says he's not a heaven guy, whatever that means. It means he's a demon! Do you have to yell? I'm 2 feet away from you. Ed holds up a cross, and Bill starts making the voice equivalent of balling of paper, and then he disappears. They turn around to Janet and she spits the water out. Well, that settles that. The weird part is that Lorraine says she can't sense anything, which doesn't sound right because there is something here. Why Lorraine isn't able to sense anything is a whole other story. They head to bed and we check back in with Peggy and Janet. Janet is still tying herself to the bed to prevent herself from moving in her sleep, although this time she gets pushed through the entire floor and gets stuck on the downstairs ceiling. We see Bill over in his chair and he gets up and he starts whistling the I Love You song from Barney? Ah, wait, I'm stupid. He must be whistling the melody of This Old Man, which I think is the original song, because Barney didn't come out until 1992, so it obviously wasn't that. And that makes more sense. Don't mind me, commonly uncultured Gen Z swine. Anyway, he walks to right above her and pulls her right through the floor. Like I said, the scares and the special effects in this one are really cool. What's not cool is that Janet is locked in a room by herself with the old man, who likes to bite shoulders. All the crosses in the room begin to turn upside down as Bill yells Janet's name, and he proceeds to lunge towards her. Her screaming wakes up her mom and she runs to the door to get it open. And for the first time, Janet gets a good look at Bill while he's harassing Janet. Ed and Lorraine also wake up and go to see what's going on. Peggy says she can't get it open and Ed tries to and then tells her to go get the key. Why was that not the first thing you did? No wonder you can't get it open. Peggy gets the key and Ed finally unlocks it and they stop Janet from being strangled by a curtain. We cut to a pub where Ed and Lorraine are meeting with Morris, Graham, and Anita, who is being a negative Nancy the whole time. Like, why are you here? They're pretty much going over all the evidence they have so far, and it's not much. They need something solid if they're going to get the church's help officially. Morris says he'll make some calls so he can get them some equipment so they can properly document the family and the demon's activities. Ed and Lorraine take the kids for some record shopping as they're finally reunited with Janet. You know, these next two couple of scenes really tug at the heartstrings. Are you crying? Ying! Oh, don't you start that shit again. Only 2 people will get that reference. Is it worth keeping in the video? Maybe not, but I'm still gonna do it. Since the record player is busted, Ed decides to grab an old guitar and sing some Elvis. Everyone else joining in as well. Very cute and sentimental moment, although Lorraine's smile begins to fade as she's probably still thinking about Ed's possible death. Meanwhile, they've got all of the equipment they could need, all while Lorraine is outside talking to Morris. Which at first I thought this guy might be in it for some sort of selfish gain, but it turns out his daughter was killed in a car crash, and he's looking for some semblance of the afterlife, which would maybe give him some comfort that his daughter is looking over him somewhere. I don't have any jokes. That is incredibly sweet and sad at the same time. This doesn't last very long as Ed is down in the basement attempting to fix the washing machine, and something appears behind him. Ed, you might want to turn around. Ed, it's literally getting closer. Ed, please, turn around. Whew, it's nothing. Wait, who is that? Ed goes to help Peggy and she's also been bitten. What is with this guy and biting people? Ew. Ed also finds a pair of 2 front teeth in the water. That's disgusting. Then things go from bad to worse as Janet sees a bunch of kitchen knives on the table somehow, even though it's pitch black in there. Johnny goes to check it out saying they shouldn't let the thing bully them. Then Janet disappears and what the fuck? Come on. So while Johnny is getting Smickledorfed in the kitchen, the fuck is Smickledorfed? Everyone runs inside to see what's going on. Doors are being slammed, things are being broken, the whole 9 yards. Ed gets the door open and finds Johnny in one of the cabinets, and Janet playing Twister in the other. He hits her with a crucifix and pulls her out. And even after all of this, Anita pulls him to the side and says she's faking it. She's what? I'd call bullshit, but then Anita plays them a video, and yep, that's her throwing shit around. I mean, honestly though, how strong can an 11-year-old be? Even then, how did she get herself entangled in the cabinet? And the countless other incidents that have happened. Anita straight up confronts Peggy about it, saying she has proof without showing the proof for some reason. She also accuses Peggy of being in on it. Peggy gets pissed as she rightfully should, because even Ed and Lorraine have their doubts. She yells at them to get out and they leave. Morris is not happy with this and tells Ed and Lorraine to reconsider, but Lorraine says she still senses nothing in his house. I wonder what this thing is doing to mask itself that even Lorraine can't even sense it. Morris says they should take their own advice and take a leap of faith. Believe even when no one else seems to. We even see Janet sadly looking out the window, doing that thing where they put their hand on a glass to tug at your heartstrings. And I'm sure this is the moment where they change their minds and go back inside. What do you mean they're still leaving? I fucking hate it here. And to make matters even worse, Billy and Margaret ask Janet why she tore up the kitchen, and Janet says it would have killed them if she didn't. It was all a ruse to get the Warrens to leave. We cut to Ed and Lorraine, who both say this whole situation doesn't feel right. Every bone in their body is telling them to believe Janet, but they still have no solid evidence, although I'd argue they have more than enough. They get onto their train, and while Ed is putting their bags up, their tape recordings fall out, forming an X. And then Ed makes a realization. He then has Lorraine help him set up the tapes. And then he plays both messages together of the jumbled up mess that Bill was saying both times Ed pulled his cross out. And that's when the wall finally lifts and Lorraine is able to see Bill for herself. He wants to move on, but he says he can't. He says it won't let him, and that it really wants Janet. Lorraine asks Bill how to stop it, and he says, I'm giving and I'm taking. I was there for your first breath. You didn't ask for me, but I will follow you until your death. Lorraine is obviously confused because what the hell does any of that mean? But before she can acquire more, a hand appears on Bill's shoulder and she reveals herself once more. The nun. And that's when the dots start to connect. Why Lorraine couldn't sense anything earlier. Bill was being used as a pawn. He has no real vendetta against his family. His message was being used for evil. Him wanted to see his family and realizing they're long gone, but not being able to move on because his demon has such a strong grasp on him. Lorraine awakens, nose bleeding, and she tells Ed what's really going on. He leaves to go get Vic before he leaves, and they beeline it straight back to the house. Lorraine realizes what Bill was trying to tell her. The demon's name. It holds power, but they have none if they don't know it. Back with Peggy and the kids, she's cleaning up the house and she starts breaking down crying. Man, I couldn't imagine how she's feeling right now. From her perspective, her only hope has just walked out the door, and now she has to face this all alone like everything else in life. She hears screaming suddenly in the living room. She runs in there to find Janet and Margaret doing their best Chris Angel impression. Margaret gets whomped into the wall, and Janet is laughing evilly in the corner. Or I guess I should say not Janet. They all run out of the house, and Peggy tells the kids to go across the street. She tries to run back into the house while all the doors are locked. Luckily, Ed, Lorraine, and Vic pull up. They also try to get into the house, but these doors are not budging. Ed breaks a window and tries to get in that way, but he gets folded by some flying furniture. He goes towards the back and Vic and Lorraine head after him. Ed finds a latch that's open, and as Lorraine is trying to go after him, it shuts. Lorraine begs for Ed to stay until they get the door open, but he says he has to go help Janet, and that he's gonna have to break his promise. This is one of those scenes that really shows the chemistry between these two. Like, I'm honestly surprised they didn't get romantically involved in real life. I mean, they are both married, but to two different people, and also have kids with those people respectfully. But it shows what could have been in a different lifetime. Ed tells Lorraine he loves her as he runs off. She yells desperately for him to come back, but he's gone. He then bursts his way through the floorboards. Simultaneously, the demon manipulates a pipe to burst right into Ed's face, leaving him partially blind. He stumbles his way through the house and makes his way upstairs. But our cricket boy is back and starts to harass blind Ed. That's a nickname if I've ever heard one. Vic breaks the door off with an axe and it's just slim enough for Lorraine to get through. Meanwhile, Ed has found Janet and she's being a little dramatic, just breaking glass in slow motion. Regular speed would have sufficed. Forgot to mention while all of this is happening, Lorraine looks back in her Bible and realizes the demon did indeed tell Lorraine its name, back when she had her episode with Judy and was scratching at the book with her pen. Which, why did the demon do this? Why not just keep your name a secret and get what you want? It's like when the villain gives the protagonist a speech of all their plans, giving them the perfect opportunity to stop all their plans. And when Lorraine said its name out loud, lightning has struck a nearby tree, perfectly forming a spear. The same spear she saw dive through Ed's chest when she had her vision. And Janet is about to jump right into it. However, Ed comes in clutch last minute and grabs her. Unfortunately, he's only hanging on by a nearby curtain, and the loops are starting to come undone one by one, while he's still struggling to hold Janet up. Lorraine finally makes it upstairs, and the demon Valak, that's her name, appears. It took the form of a nun to mock Lorraine's faith. She calls upon its name and condemns it back to hell. We also see its true form for a split second, but then it disappears into the darkness. And oh shit, we won!
Victory screech!
And we didn't even lose Krillin. Oh, fizzle sticks. Well, at least Ed's alive. Lorraine pulls them both up, and Peggy goes to hug Janet while Ed and Lorraine take a deep sigh of relief once again. Another family saved. We get some cute moments of Ed giving his cross to Janet. We also get some on-screen text saying that Peggy and the fam continue to live in this house. God, I can only imagine the renovations. Even getting a little tidbit of Peggy passing away peacefully in 2003, and she died in the same chair that Bill died in. Ain't that something? They head back home, and Ed puts the Crooked Man toy in the haunted doodad's room. Him and Lorraine slow dance to some Elvis like the cutie patooties that they are, and the movie ends. And that, my friends, is The Conjuring 2. You know, I really enjoyed watching this one after so long. I remember really liking it when it first came out and everyone I knew was talking about it. I'd say as far as sequels go, this does everything right. The scares are more unique, the monsters as well, and although the ending was a tiny bit anticlimactic, I think it wrapped up pretty nicely. In 2 hours and 13 minutes. Why was this movie that long? Granted, it didn't exactly feel like 2 hours and 13 minutes, but damn, the first film was already pushing it with a $1.52. Long runtime aside, have you seen The Conjuring 2? If so, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. If you somehow haven't, then I'd say yeah, definitely watch this one, and the first one too. I can't speak too highly of the last two Conjuring films. The most previous one is inoffensive, if not a little boring, and I don't even remember the third one. The first two are definitely worth your time. Demon possession movies have gotten pretty played out, but this one at least is when it seemed like studios were actually trying. Also shout out to Warfighter 3128, Talik-OS 5899, King K 1738, Snickerdough 2731, Restock _ 1731, Baka Nod, hopefully I said that right, my apologies, T-Bone the Steak, and Rashi Kitsuke for being members of the channel. Forgot to shout out some of y'all names last video, my bad. But your support means the world to me and I thank you. My name is Greaves and as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace!